So today was the hardest day so far during the COVID pandemic. Today so essentially I was working from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6:30 a.m. rather. I'm still at the hospital. It is about 8:05 a.m. right now. I was supposed to be gone at 6:30, and I am still here because I was in charge of the medicine unit. Because of the huge demand of people coming in, they increased the amount of patients that residents and interns can see from 14 max to 20 max. And I was responsible as being the intern on night call. I was in charge of overseeing 4 teams. So I oversaw 80 patients. All of them had COVID. At least 70% of them were acutely ill, requiring, and about 95% of them required oxygen. A lot of them, and with COVID, it's unpredictable. 1 minute you are stable, and the next minute you can decompensate, your lungs can fail, and that can make your heart fail. And unfortunately, we had people, the youngest was 20, the oldest was 92. Today, last night, from 6 p.m. till 6:30 a.m. this morning, we had 15 codes. We had 15 codes in 12 hours. Each code involves residents and pulmonology fellows running the codes. And that is on top of 80 sick patients, which 80% are acutely sick and can crash at any moment. And that's not including the 80 patients in the ER who have been waiting for 3 days to be admitted into medicine, but they cannot be admitted to medicine because there is simply no room and there's very short staff. So on top of the 80 patients that we took care of and the 15 codes that happened in the past 12 hours, we had to help the residents with admissions because there are only 2 residents to admit 80 patients, and there are 4 interns, including myself, who were here overnight, and we had to help admit with the residents. And normally we could help with admitting 3, 4 if need be, 4 being absolutely worse situation. And it would have come to that, but there was so much going on that literally every hour, sometimes at the very same time within an hour, there would be a code. So when I got there at 6 p.m., I walked in, there was the day team, and the day team had their worst day. They had code after code, some people coding multiple times, and a lot of people have reached the maximum amount of oxygen that can be provided, and unfortunately, even when they're intubated, they just could not breathe well because the virus had spread through the lungs and damaged the lungs so much that the lungs couldn't move air properly, and that is what makes them crash, and it happened to a lot of patients. So when I walked in during my night float, the day team was scrambling. A lot of them, they were supposed to be done by 6 p.m. and I was supposed to start my shift at 6 p.m. I started at 6 p.m., but a lot of them stayed till 9 p.m. after working a 12-hour shift. So they stayed an extra 3, almost 4 hours because we kept getting codes after codes. So at 6 p.m., literally about 5 minutes until I walked into my shift, we heard a code blue. So we ran to the code, and we're trying to resuscitate this person. He was in his 50s, and then while we're resuscitating, we hear another code blue, and that was in another unit on the opposite side of the hospital. So our rapid response team, which included myself, had to split, one staying with the current code and the other going to the next code. Also during that time, we had a patient next door to the first code. The patient became hypoxic, or they had low oxygen levels, which is a sign of lung failure, which could cause your heart to stop. So one intern had to go, and one resident had to go assist with that to try to intubate them so their heart wouldn't stop and wouldn't call another code. This kind of cycle lasted until 9 p.m., not even 10 p.m. That is when we saw our first relieved at 10 p.m. and we had 5 codes from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Unfortunately, one of them made it during those 5 codes. And unfortunately, a lot of them were 50-year-olds. Some were even 30s, and they had a family and young children. So at 10 p.m., we were able to dedicate time to the patients on the floor the 80 patients that we had to look after. So we had to rush to make sure that they're breathing well, their oxygen levels are well. We had to check electrolytes on some patients, had to help collect blood, just do the basic general medicine practices of these patients. And we would also get the dreaded call, because the ER is so flooded and the ER doctors are doing an amazing job and doing the best that they can given the circumstances. But the ER is full of patients and they are swamped. Normally having 200 patients, but having 300 at least. And sometimes we would get the dreaded call that a patient who was waiting for a bed in the ER passed away. They received all the oxygen that we provided. They were intubated, which is the last resort, and they still didn't survive. And the very sad thing about it is there isn't much else that we can do because we do not know a cure for coronavirus. We still do not know a definitive cure for coronavirus. Some people recover on their own, and unfortunately some others don't, but unfortunately we do not have a cure. And unfortunately, when we can support the lungs as much as we can, but sometimes the virus overcomes it. So we would hear that devastating news, and then we would have to call the family to inform them that their family member has passed away, let them know that it is because of coronavirus, and give them some comfort in that they did pass away peacefully. But the saddest thing is sometimes they would say we have 2 children, which is what happened. I called a family member, and they had he was a 50-year-old and he had 2 children, but unfortunately he didn't make it, so I had to break the news to his wife. The second and the other thing is our hospital is not allowing visitors for patients at all to minimize exposure. And because of that, when the family asks, can we see them, can we come, can we claim the body, we have to say no to every single one of those questions, because it is not safe to bring the family into the hospital for risk they get exposed, and it's not safe for them to claim the body because the virus is unfortunately still with the person. So that happened. That continued to happen the rest of the 12-hour shift. At the end of the day, having 15 codes, about 3 survived, or at least we were able to revive them. They're still intubated. So I am exhausted right now. It hurts to walk. This is literally the first time in 12 hours that I have sat down and processed everything. I am shocked. I am stunned with all that has happened. I can't believe this is the worst night since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. That being said, I am still very thankful to be able to help in this fight. I had a great shift with amazing residents who would help with everything, who would be comfort during this tough time. And we got amazing support from nurses, PAs, and have amazing donations from not only the local community, but all over the world. I'm in the team room right now, and these are where we're holding the donations. If you can see, it's a little messy, but there's the donations right there. Like masks, PPEs, we have food, a lot of food. Like we had Five Guys donate burgers to us yesterday. Thank you, Five Guys, for giving me my meal for this time. So like that being said, I'm still very glad to be a part of this fight. I'm glad that I was able to make a difference. It is hard. I am still shocked, but we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this, stick together, and that's how we're going to get through it. So now I have to go to sleep because I do this all over again tonight. I have to be back here at 6 p.m. for my next 12-hour shift at night, and I'm going to do the same thing for 2 weeks. So I'm off to bed. Thank you for listening.